Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
World War II, from 1939 to 1945, began as a power struggle among European nations and their allies. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States declared war against Japan, thus officially entering the worldwide conflict. Many Americans distrusted Japanese Americans after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. However, due to their willingness to fight and their loyalty to the American government, it was allowed that the 442nd Combat Team, an all-Japanese American unit, to be created. The team was one of the most decorated units in military history, thus changing America's popular opinion about Japanese Americans.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, many Americans believed that Japanese residents were spies. They were thought to be transferring secret information back to Japan and still be loyal to their native country. In response, the U.S. government approved a plan to send Japanese Americans to internment camps on the West Coast. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, and 112,000 Japanese Americans were relocated to the camps. Although they were interned, young Japanese men felt that they could support the war effort even farther, and began unofficial training within internment Camp McCoy. At first, soldiers faced prejudice and distrust because they were Japanese. The Department of War announced that it
would not accept for service within the armed forces Japanese or persons of Japanese extraction, regardless of citizenship, status, or other factors.
In September of that year, the idea of creating a Japanese unit was rejected.
Because of universal distrust in which they, Japanese Americans, are held.
However, during this time, the United States War Department was calling for young men across the nation to volunteer for the Army, and with over 12,000 Japanese men that were willing and eager to take up arms, the War Department could hardly continue to ignore them. With the good recommendations of General Mark W. Clark, the men were put back into training and hostilities relaxed.
They demonstrated conclusively the loyalty and valor of our American citizens of Japanese ancestry in combat.
On February 1, 1943, President Roosevelt announced the formation of an all-Japanese American military unit, the 442nd Infantry Unit. The new unit was moved to Camp Shelby in Mississippi so that the men could be trained as an Army unit and could be activated and transported to Europe at a moment's notice. On April 22, 1944, the RCT, Regional Combat Team, was loaded onto ships bound for Italy. Their objective was to fortify the Italian front for the Allies and do what they could to help liberate the French people from Nazi control. The team arrived at Rome in June and was attached to the 100th Battalion in the Roman Arno campaign. During the RCT's time along the Arno River in Rome, they were under the command of General Mark Clark. Later, the Japanese troops fought alongside the 100th Battalion in the Naples-Vaga campaign, concluding the Mediterranean theater of operations.
So at the end of 1944, the 42nd Regiment Combat Team was detached from the 100th Battalion, and they split so that some of the men could be sent to southern France to make an assault on the Nazi control, and the rest of the men could be sent northward to begin the European Theater of Operations. The European Theater of Operations was actually two different campaigns, the Rhineland Campaign Vosges and the Rhineland Campaign Maritime Alps. So both of these campaigns were right on the banks of the Rhine River trying to push the German forces back before they could take more land. The Germans defeated the American troops at the Vosges Mountains, but the 442nd liberated Bruyères, Belmont, and Bifontaine, French cities that had previously been under Nazi control.
Near the end of the RCT's time on the French fronts, the team was called to rescue the 441st Division of the 36th Infantry Unit. The 442nd did so, and suffered astonishing casualties. 2 to 3 times the number of RCT soldiers were killed compared to the 211 members of the 441st that were rescued.
The 442nd fought with the French and with the Americans, and after their experience in the two campaigns, General Clark actually sent them to Italy to reinforce this the German Gothic line, which was like the big showdown. This fortified line of German soldiers had successfully blocked advances by the Allied forces, the Americans, for over 6 months. This was it. This was their final battle. With the reinforcements, meaning the 442nd, the Allied forces broke through the German defenses in less than a day. It must have been incredible.
Axis troops relocated to the Po Valley, and the Po Valley campaign concluded with German surrender on May 2nd, 1945. When the soldiers of the RCT returned home, they were presented with awards for their courage and strength in battle. Out of roughly 14,000 soldiers that served, 9,486 of them, about 67% of them, were awarded with Purple Hearts. 21 of them received Medals of Honor. In addition, they were awarded Distinguished Service Crosses, Silver Stars, Legion of Merit Awards, Bronze Stars, and 7 Presidential Unit Citations, the highest award for valor that can be given to an Army unit. These were only some of the awards presented to the soldiers of the RCT. In all, over 18,000 individual awards were given. In America, the RCT quickly became noted for its loyalty, valor, and fearless fighting and pride. During the campaigns, 4,419 RCT men were killed, wounded, or missing in action. Although the men were dying in every battle and campaign, they continued to fight bravely and be victorious. The risks taken by these men on the battlefield led them to choose their slogan, "Go for broke."